Cain. It's such an honor to bring you here today.
Hi, Ariel. It's great to be here.
Would you mind sharing with our audience just a brief introduction of yourself, whatever you feel comfortable sharing?
My name is Susan Cain. I'm an author. I wrote a book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. I've also kind of turned into a public speaker for a living, which is very ironic in ways that we can talk about. And right now I am working on my next book, which should come out in another year or so. And I'm also developing a podcast. So lots of different things going on.
I've actually listened to your podcast recently. I think a lot of the topics that you bring up are very interesting, especially your podcast on the college admissions process. Especially the way that many times in the admissions process, they seem to value extroverts over introverts, such as leadership skills and the ability to sort of like reach out to other people in a more comfortable way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what sort of things would you say to the youth out there who are going through the college admissions process and are sort of struggling with this identity that they have and trying to fit the mold that society is trying to put on them?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. I do think it's a real problem in the college admissions process. I can tell you that this is a problem that college admissions officers are aware of because many of them have reached out to me over the years, and I've done work with consortia of Ivy League admissions officers, so they're aware of it. And there's also, I don't know if it's still up there, but it probably is, on the Harvard website. There's an incredible essay by a professor named Helen something. I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. She's fabulous. But she talks about this bias in admissions and how it needs to be corrected. But for people who are listening today and thinking, okay, that's great that one day it's going to be corrected, but what do I do right now if I'm not an extrovert and I'm applying? The answer really is to figure out what your niche is, and develop that in a way that is really meaningful to you. I can give you my own example. And of course, when I was applying to colleges a gazillion years ago, it was not, we thought of it as competitive at the time, but it was not the crazy fierce competition that all of you are facing. But still, I'll tell you my story, which is, I was not the kid who was going to be the president of the class or editor of the school paper or whatever, but I had always wanted to be a writer. And so I became the editor of my school literary magazine and also the editor of my school foreign language magazine. And because I sincerely wanted to be a writer and those were the activities I was doing, that whole kind of package of activities and academic interests all kind of fit together and made sense. And it wasn't the application package of an extrovert, but it didn't really need to be, because it was still showing value and coherence. And I think that that's really the answer nowadays, and that's really and so that's the answer for today's introverts also. And I'll just tell you, like, your version, Ariel, of what you're doing with your Incandescent review. I was telling you this before we got into our formal interview. The minute I saw it, I was just completely blown away by what you and your colleagues are achieving. I mean, it's beautiful and it's professional and it has a sensibility and it has a voice, and and it's got just artistic gorgeousness. I can't say enough about it. I don't know if you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, but it kind of doesn't matter. That's what you're doing. What do you consider yourself?
Well, I've actually switched between a lot. For a while, I thought I was an extrovert, especially with the MBTI test. I got an ENFJ.
Mm-hmm.
But then I listened to your podcast and your TED interview, and then I started thinking, like, am I an extrovert? I feel like there's sort of a gray area. Like, a spectrum between extroversion and introversion, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure if I can personally tell if I'm an extrovert or if I'm an introvert, or if I'm just shy or potentially have like social anxiety. So I guess my question to you is, how would one be able to tell the difference between um, the gray area between being shy and just being an introvert?
Oh, yeah. It's a good question because you could be a shy extrovert. So shyness is more about social nervousness and the fear of social judgment. So if you're shy and you're in situations where you're going to be evaluated socially one way or another, let's say it's an interview or a date or whatever, um, a shy person, everybody experiences some nervousness during those situations, but a shy person experiences more. And a shy person, when they see another person with a neutral expression on their face, they're more likely to read disapproval into that expression, as opposed to, and then to feel really badly about that disapproval, as opposed to kind of just brushing it off or taking it in stride. Whereas an introvert is more about just a preference for quieter, more mellow situations. Introverts will tend to prefer socializing with one or two people at a time as opposed to a big crowd. They'll tend to prefer the company of people they know and to get into deep conversations as opposed to lots of new people and maybe more superficial conversations. So in practice, many introverts are shy, but you could be an introvert who's not shy, and you could be somebody who's extroverted in the sense of like always wanting lots of activity and lots of people around you, but at the same time feeling nervous about that, which in some ways is that can be a lot harder in a way than being a shy introvert because you can feel torn between your desire to be with a lot of people
Yeah.
and the nervousness that that makes you feel. Do you think you're more of a
Um,
shy extrovert or introvert?
I love being with people, but I like sort of connecting with people emotionally on like a deeper level. So I love having one-on-one conversations, rather than hanging out with large groups of people. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
I may be an introvert, but I think I'm still a little bit on the line. Another question, just branching out from that topic, was um, does introversion and extroversion necessarily have to do with people, or does that have to do with the way we sort of think? So I guess I was thinking, when people go into these social situations where they have to engage with these different people and sort of react to these situations that they can't really prepare for, is this really just a nervousness or like drain of energy that comes from interacting with people specifically, or sort of this stimulus that they have to react to without being prepared?
You know, what you're really getting at, I think, is that a lot of what makes an introvert an introvert or an extrovert
Oh,
is kind of the question of how do you react to stimulation in general. So somebody who's introverted, it's, you know, we tend to think of it as like, oh, do you like going to parties or don't you? Do you tend to raise your hand a lot in class or don't you? But
mhm,
it really has much more to do with having a nervous system that prefers kind of less stimulation going on at any given time. Which is why, like, you know, Ken, you know, my husband Ken and I like he's much more extroverted, and we have completely different reactions to going to an airport. Like
mhm.
when we go to an airport, you know, which is like a hyper stimulating environment with lots of noise and hubbub and sounds and everything, um, he gets sped up and stimulated by pleasantly stimulated by that, whereas I get overwhelmed by it. So like if you're the person who's going into, let's say, um, I forget the exact scenario you just gave, but maybe you're in class or whatever, and there's a big discussion going on and you feel overwhelmed by it, like what might be happening is just that your nervous system is feeling overwhelmed by that kind of situation, and that's why you don't enjoy those kinds of social situations so much. So it's not so much about like, am I a social person or am I not? It's more like, how do I like to socialize and how do I like to interact?
I understand that part of your message in your quiet revolution or evolution, you have been trying to spread this message that introversion isn't necessarily um, a weakness as society often portrays it to be, that it also has its strengths. So, would you mind expanding on some of those strengths, sort of to empower our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was kind of the big mismatch that got me writing the book in the first place, in that
Mhm.
I looked around at the culture and I saw that so many of the people who were contributing in prominent ways, or just people who I knew personally, were doing that because of having quiet and cerebral temperaments, not in spite of it, but because of it. And yet the predominant message was that everybody should be extroverted and that would be the only real way to contribute. So like I opened up my book by talking about Rosa Parks. Even for me, I still remember the moment that she first passed away. I remember exactly where I was in my apartment in New York City at the time. And I remember listening to NPR and hearing the news of her passing. And I didn't know that much about her as a person at the time. I knew what she had done, but I didn't know what she had been like. And suddenly I was hearing these obituaries that were describing her as shy and sweet and um, not very tall and just sort of as a quiet person. And that the book that she had written had been called Quiet Strength. And I had imagined, and I realized as I listened to that, that I had imagined her as being much more of a kind of bold, extroverted, take charge person, just because of the sheer enormity of what she had done. That was kind of the catalyst that got me thinking about what a mismatch there is. You had asked, like, what are some of those strengths that quiet people bring to the table? And
Yes.
I mean, there's so many of them. One is just is kind of the pure question of how you spend your time. Like, if you're somebody who's not as inclined to be going out and about, and you're tending to spend more time inside your mind, you're going to be developing ideas. You're going to tend to develop ideas in a deeper and more thoughtful way, just because we all only have 24 hours in the day. And the question of where you choose to direct your energy during those 24 hours has profound implications. Like we know that to develop great expertise or to develop a great creative skill, it requires what psychologists call deliberate practice, where you apply yourself to developing that expertise or that creativity, and kind of constantly operating within the zone between boredom and anxiety. So, like, the space where you're always stretching yourself a little bit beyond what's easy for you to do. You're not stretching too much, so you're not like overly anxious about it, but you're in this constant state of flow, because you're always, like, your arm is always outstretched to the place that's just beyond your limits. And it's much easier, we know, to get into that state of deliberate practice if you're alone, or if you're working one-on-one with a coach who's helping you. So these are all just like orientations to the world that have profound implications that we don't pay attention to. Um, so those are kind of the more obvious ones, but then the one that we don't notice as much is leadership. People will they'll often say, okay, well, I can imagine, a creative person, an introvert making an effective creative person, but of course introverts aren't going to make good leaders, right? Um, but that's not actually true, and that's why you see leaders like, a Rosa Parks or an Eleanor Roosevelt or a Bill Gates. All of these people are introverts, and there's a lot of data showing that introverted leaders deliver, in some cases, better outcomes than extroverts do, but they get there through a different way. They tend to be like listening really intently to the people who they're leading, um, allowing the ideas of those who they're leading to rise to the surface, instead of putting their own stamp on things. So it's a different way of approaching the world, and in a way that pays off unexpected dividends.
Branching off on what we were speaking about before, about how colleges tend to favor extroverted traits a lot more, and people tend to feel this pressure to fit into this mold. On the bigger scale, as a society, how do you think we can change and adapt so that we can accommodate for this other one third of the human race? I heard from your TED interview that the solution to our negligence of these people and their strengths um, has some pretty simple solutions. So, what do you think some of those solutions might be?
Well, I believe that all of this has to start with awareness and with the raising of consciousness about this, and that we've made tremendous progress in the last 8 or 9 years in doing that, but that there's still a lot more work to be done. So I've actually been like incredibly excited and gratified to see how many schools and how many companies have been really receptive to this message and understanding that a third to a half of their student population and then a third to a half of their workforce are introverts, and that it's in everybody's interest to have the introverted part of their population working in a way that uses their talents and uses their energies and has them um, kind of working at capacity and making the most of their hearts and minds. So the first thing is just bringing people on board, and as I say, like, the good news is that most people are really receptive to these changes. And then in terms of what the changes are, I mean, there's so many different places to go with that. Like, if we're talking about schools, everything really needs to be um, thought through. So, for example, if you think about recess in schools for younger kids, you know, you want to make sure that kids have an option of where they do their recess. There shouldn't be only one way where the only thing that's on offer is kind of like a big social romp with your friends. There also needs to be there are ways for classrooms to be set up where kids have the chance or have the opportunity to play chess or to read books or whatever, and or to just chat quietly with their friends, and for those spaces to be set up in a way where those activities are seen as just as powerful and as mattering just as much as as the more traditional recess activities. So all of school can be thought through or rethought that way. And then the same thing within companies. And we can talk about more examples, but I guess that's really where I'm going. Like, everything needs to be rethought, from the way we give feedback on report cards, to the way, once you get into the workforce, like the way meetings are designed, or how often should you have meetings, or how should workplaces be designed architecturally. All of it can be tweaked in ways that really make the most of introverts as well as extroverts.
So, I guess what you're saying is that the way we're starting is by changing the social conversation so that we can rethink the way we construct everything, basically, from the way that we evaluate a student's performance or participation in class to the way we acknowledge the work that a worker is doing, or to see whether or not they would be promoted in a company. Just many different ways that we could do so. Now, going back a little bit smaller, in the Incandescent review, our purpose is to illuminate youth voices. Um, do you think there's anything we could do to help aid the quiet revolution?
Yeah, I think that you could be soliciting the input of writers who want to talk about their experience as introverts. And I know there's so many who want to talk about it. Lots of writers tend to be introverted, and lots of artists too. So it would be really interesting to get a dialogue on the Incandescent review about just introvert experience and extrovert experience and how they differ, and so on. I think that would be fantastic.
So, I want to lead this conversation a little bit away from the specific novel and the quiet revolution to your experience, your personal experiences as an introvert, going out and becoming a TED talker and an internationally best-selling author. Um, so we have so many aspiring youth writers and creators who may be being held back from sharing their work out of shyness or simply introversion. I understand from your earlier talks where you talked about how in the workforce in general, like many people are become more successful if they're able to promote themselves easily, if they're able to put themselves out there, attend social gatherings. So for the introverted young creators out there, would you mind sharing sort of your experiences of being an introvert and then diving into this world of publishing and TED Talks and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I first started, I was writing my book, Quiet, and at that point, I was absolutely like during the whole time I was writing it, I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. It was something I had done before because I had gone to law school and I had been a lawyer for almost or for about 10 years before I started writing. So I had done public speaking. I had gritted my teeth through it, but I had always hated it and been terrified of it. And then when I was writing Quiet and I knew it was coming out, I felt like I didn't want that fear that I had to stand in the way of my ability to promote these ideas that really mattered so much to me. So I decided that I had to overcome this fear one way or another, and I did all these different things to overcome it. But the thing that really worked the most was it's actually a technique in psychology that I'm going to share with you, a kind of piece of magic for any fear that anybody listening has today or any time in their lives. And it could be the fear of public speaking, but it could be another fear. The magical way to overcome any fear is to expose yourself to the thing you are most afraid of. But you have to expose yourself in very small doses. So like, you can't start if you're terrified of public speaking the way I used to be. You can't start by giving a TED talk. You have to start really small. So I went to this class in New York City for people who were afraid of public speaking. And the way this class worked was you you just had to practice speaking in very small doses. So on the first day, you would show up for class, and all you'd have to do was stand up and say your name and then sit back down, and you were done. And then you'd come back the next week, and maybe you'd stand up and answer a few questions about where you'd gone to school and where did you grow up, so easy stuff. And then you were done. And like little by little by little, you would work up to the place where you were more comfortable. If somebody is listening right now and they're terrified of public speaking, you're probably thinking, no, 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 nothing will work for me. I will never get rid of this fear. But I can tell you it truly is possible. And the other magical way to overcome your fear of public speaking is to speak about things that really matter to you. The fearful person is obsessed with the question of how the audience is judging them. Like all they're thinking about is, how am I coming across? I probably sound like an idiot right now. But if you can shift your mindset to just talking about something that you think really matters, that would be helpful to your audience, now no longer are you worried about being judged. You're more thinking, how can I help? How can I transmit something of value here? And that is so much more of an open and spacious and helpful mindset than the one that's just all about like, how am I coming across? So those are really the two things.
Oh, so I understand that you're involved with JATEC and the public speaking contest. So how do you think the speaking workshops from JATEC could be helping introverts also speak up and find their public speaking voices?
What JATEC gives you a chance to do is to prepare a talk that's only 3 minutes long. So, You don't have to do something that's half an hour. You don't have to be on stage for a long period of time. You're starting from your home, from behind a video camera, doing a 3-minute talk. You have the chance to talk about something that matters a lot to you. It's actually a great way to get started. And if you're listening right now and thinking, oh, I'm kind of a nervous speaker, don't even think of, it would be great if you win the contest, but I wouldn't even think of winning the contest as your goal. I would think of it as like, this is how I'm starting. This is step one in my journey. I'm going to do 3 minutes from behind a camera, or I'm going to do 3 minutes in the context of a videotape, not even live. And I'm going to declare my ability to do this as my great victory. And if I win, that's awesome, but that's actually not the point. The
Yeah,
point
that's
is to
exactly.
get started on that journey.
Yeah, participating in contests, speech competitions, putting yourself out there, even if you don't necessarily get a prize, I feel like even the process of trying it out and um, trying to sort of overcome your fear is already such a great learning process. And as you were saying before, conquering your fear in small doses, I guess it kind of works like a vaccine, doesn't it? I mean, well, no, not a vaccine.
Yeah, exactly. Like allergy shots are desensitizing. And that's what psychologists call this process. It's a process of desensitization. It's a perfect metaphor. I guess the other thing I would say about it is
Mhm.
we live in such a culture of achievement that I think from a kind of spiritual point of view is really steering us in the wrong direction, because it's telling us that all that matters is winning the prize or being the number one at something. And that's not really the recipe for fulfillment. It's
Yeah.
more like if the number one thing happens, that's really nice along the way. But I'll share this story just from a completely different context, which is
Okay.
that when I first left my legal career and started writing,
Mhm.
at the time, I had no expectation that I would ever be able to make a living from writing because I'd always heard how difficult it was, even to get published in the first place. So I told myself that my goal was to publish something by the time I was 75 years old. And when I started, I was about 33. So I was giving myself like 4 decades. And I was really working on my writing all that time. I set up my whole life so that writing was going to be the hobby that my whole life was centered around.
Mhm.
But I took the need to achieve at a huge scale completely off the table. It wasn't really the point because I felt that making that the point would take away all the joy from what I was doing.
Yeah. So I guess what you were trying to do is sort of battle this societal need that says that we need external validation and sort of continue to be fueled by your internal drive, your internal
Yeah.
need to express and write and um, just do what you love, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about it. I don't mean to say external validation doesn't feel really good, because of course it does.
It does, yeah.
It's just at the end of the day, that's not what's going to really sustain you.
Do you have any closing advice for any young writers or creators or introverts out there? Any closing statements that you'd just like to end off on?
Okay, you know what I will say? I think about the following thing a lot, that you all in your generation, you are growing up in a time in which everything you write and say and create is kind of like inherently performative because everything is online and you're kind of expecting everything you say to be seen.
Mhm.
But what makes how do I say this? What makes for really true and great art is when the artist or the writer or whatever is sharing some kind of a deep truth. And there are some deep truths that aren't really ready to be performed yet because maybe they feel too personal.
Mhm.
So I guess what I would say is to take a step away from the performative culture we live in and to try creating and writing things that you believe that you're never going to share with anybody and see what you come up with. Like if you knew that nobody was ever going to be looking, no one was going to be judging, no one was going to be knowing whatever your psychological secret is that you're expressing through your art, what would you say then and what would you create then? And see what happens. Like so you're never going to put it online. See what happens. And you might find you come up with things that don't feel safe to share today, but might feel safe to share in a year or in 10 years or whatever. But it's really important to go through that process because that's how you get in the creative habit of telling the truth about what you really think. And that's the whole reason that as humans, we look to the creative people among us. We're looking for the truth.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's really that's a big first step that gets uh, that gets missed, especially nowadays because of how performative everything has become.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely a lot of creativity and originality is being suppressed for the sake of sort of appealing to a certain audience, to a certain people that we're anticipating of showing it to. Um, but thank you so much for your insight and encouraging our readers to sort of find their unique voices and just express how they feel and go after what is fulfilling for them.
Well, you are so welcome, and really, what you and your colleagues are doing at Incandescent Review is so inspiring and so beautiful. I just can't wait to see what it becomes. I'm really so moved by it, and I congratulate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.